Hi, mine's Phil, talking about politics, and in this video, as the Telegraph reveals a load more boozy lockdown breaking parties at Downing Street, I'm going to take a look at how the internal inquiry is expected to proceed and why Conservative MPs attempting to defend Boris Johnson are urging people to wait for the conclusions. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So it seems quite clear that there's a drinking at work culture in Downing Street under Boris Johnson. I was only half joking when I'd earlier said that they seem to be having 2 parties a week. In fact, that might be an underestimate. Lockdown or no lockdown, Downing Street staff seem to be permanently drunk and not getting a lot of work done at all. In fact, I did have it pointed out to me that if the heart of government is constantly boozing, it might actually explain the inability of our government to get anything done. On Thursday evening, a correspondent at the Telegraph announced a whole series of boozy parties that we previously didn't know about. One of them, arguably the biggest faux pas, was a drunken party which included not only booze but dancing, a proper party, into the early hours of the morning, the night before the Queen attended a memorial service for her late husband, Prince Philip, alone. Now, it had already been pointed out that the Queen was trying her best to show leadership by respecting not only the letter of the law, but the spirit of the rules as well, in attending the service alone, while Johnson was ignoring his own laws. But to be told that his staff, if not the Prime Minister himself, would have been hungover from another illegal boozy party at the very time when the Queen was mourning her husband is the very definition of juxtaposition. But it begs the question, why did the Telegraph of all papers publish this? The paper that Boris Johnson used to work for. The only way I could have been more surprised is if it was the Express, which is basically the Boris Johnson fan club these days. In my view, I think it's because we're all going to find out anyway. When Sue Gray completes her inquiry, it was expected to be in about a week or two, I think, she is likely to describe a massive culture of boozing at work. Now, don't imagine that she's going to publish a damning report into Boris Johnson's failure to follow his own rules. There are 4 reasons why Gray's report is not going to do this. First, she works for Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson personally appointed her to this task. Some in the media are misleading the public by describing it as an independent inquiry. It is not. It is a Boris Johnson inquiry, where he set the terms of the investigation as well as appointed the person carrying it out. Secondly, cabinet ministers who are desperately trying to persuade MPs not to submit letters of no confidence in Boris Johnson have said to wait for the inquiry. Wait for the inquiry. That is what they keep telling their own MPs, opposition MPs, the media, the public, anyone who asks. Wait for the inquiry. Don't preempt the inquiry. They would not be saying this unless they expected it to be able to claim that it exonerates Johnson of blame. Third, the Met Police. They've said they're going to wait for the Gray investigation to conclude before taking actions themselves. This stinks of corruption. It is bad enough that Met Police, who patrolled Downing Street, did not stop the parties that they must have known were going on. It is also disgraceful that they refused to investigate when proof was made public that the parties occurred. But to actually claim that they shouldn't investigate a series of crimes because the potential criminals are carrying out their own investigation is perverse. They are literally allowing the potential criminals to destroy and fix evidence of a crime. Speaking of which, fourth, Sue Gray is known as a civil servant who has no qualms about suppressing information. She has form for destroying information to get out of freedom of information publications of damaging documents. She may very well be a competent official, but she is also a government stooge. She will do what is required of her, and what is required of her is to publish a report that is both credible, but also lets Johnson off the hook. Now that does beg the question, how can Sue Gray publish a report that is in line with what we know, but also lets Johnson off the hook? She can't just conclude that there were no parties, that they were all connected to work for two reasons. First of all, work had nothing to do with the laws at the time, because all this talk of work events and work gatherings, they were banned still. Work gatherings were still banned. You were banned for gathering for the purpose of work. Simple as that. It was in the law. Her report will need to be consistent with the legal position, or it will be torn to shreds in Parliament. There are several legal experts on the opposition benches in a number of parties, including the Labour leader, of course. Second, the public know that these parties took place, and they quite clearly were parties. A report that is not believed by the public is of no use to Boris Johnson. Because make no mistake, the reason Johnson's position is under threat is not because of what he has or hasn't done, but because of what the public think of him. He doesn't need these reports to convince Tory MPs to back him. They all know the truth. Most of them aren't that thick. He needs the report to put doubt in the minds of Tory and potential Tory voters. He needs to be able to reverse the decline in the polls that he's causing his party. So the report has to be in line with what the public already know. And as importantly, it also has to be in line with any further revelations that might come out. It's no good this report being published and then the day after more damaging revelations come out that completely snooker it. Be a waste of time having the report. As such, the report inevitably has to talk about a culture of boozing at work at Downing Street. So how will her report go? Well, before I go over my speculation, some interesting points from the ever insightful David Alan Green, a constitutional legal expert. He wondered if it might not end up being like the Mueller report into Russian interference in the 2016 US presidential election. The report provided lots of evidence that it did and that Trump was complicit. But because it drew no conclusions and because Mueller didn't arrest Trump, the then president claimed that it exonerated him. This is because it was not down to Mueller to draw conclusions. That would be for a judge and jury, or Congress in the case of impeachment. Mueller was an investigator. It was merely his job to gather evidence. The same will apply with Sue Gray. She isn't even a law enforcement officer. She has no authority to decide whether or not Boris Johnson is guilty of a criminal offence, or indeed anyone else. So her report cannot possibly find that anyone broke the rules, including the Prime Minister. All she can do is present the facts that come to light. That's what Green thinks the report will be, a catalogue of factual statements, which I agree with. So now on to my speculation. And I go back to my earlier political training, watching Yes Minister as a kid in the 80s. The senior civil servant in that sitcom always said, always admit freely anything that people could easily find out some other way. Gray will include in her report a catalogue of all the gatherings that already are in the public domain, as well as others that we don't even know about yet, but that we could find out about. In fact, the more the better, in fact. I think she will paint a picture of a boozing culture at 10 Downing Street that predated the pandemic. As a result, she will attempt to paint a picture of staff who weren't consciously breaking any rules, of people who couldn't tell the difference between what we would clearly see as a party and work, because their work life was basically what ordinary members of the public would think as a party. Now, that will still be a false assertion, because remember, we had that video of Downing Street staffers joking about how to get around questions from journalists about a potential party. So they knew it was a party. But the report will try and suggest that these people working there didn't see it as a party. It was just how they worked. Her report will make it clear that the rules were broken. She won't say they were broken, because that's not her job. But she will present events that clearly broke the rules. But she will fudge the issue by saying that nobody consciously broke the rules, that there was no intent. The report will not tackle why Boris Johnson lied about these events taking place, or whether he at least should have understood his own laws. It will just be a catalogue of events, on this date, this happened, that may have appeared to break the rules, with the justification that staff there just thought that that's what work was. Because that's what work has been for them. And when it's published, Johnson will apologise again on behalf of his staff for how it looks just like he did before. Doesn't apologise for anything he's done, just for how it might appear to the public, pretending to take responsibility for the actions of others. A couple of scapegoats will be found to carry the can, and he will say, lessons are learned, let's now all draw a line under it and move on. Tory MPs will not make any judgment themselves because they don't care one way or the other. They will wait to see what the public think of the whitewash. If the public see the inquiry for the sham it will be, then it will not do the job and Johnson may be gone even before the May elections. If it sows enough doubt in the minds of particularly Tory voters, I'll tell you the phrase that's going to come up as soon as it's released as well, by the way, let's move on. The public want us to move on. They'll say to opposition MPs, the inquiry has made it clear that nobody deliberately broke the rules. Maybe the rules were a bit confusing. We're sorry about that. Let's move on now. The public want you to move on. That's what they'll be saying. They'll be saying it until you're bored of it. And if it does sow enough doubt in the minds of, as I say, particularly Tory voters, don't be fooled by any polls that come out that show a majority of the public aren't impressed by it. They don't care about the majority of the public. They only care about the people whose votes they can get. And if of that demographic, it shows that maybe there's some going, oh, maybe it wasn't that big a deal after all, and there are no other major scandals, then they'll give Boris Johnson more time. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.